Welcome to Elevate Vets, Advocacy and Support for Military Connected Students. Just to let you know, this presentation is being recorded and the resources will be posted on the MEC website. And please submit your questions through the question and answer box that you see. And we also have a survey after the presentation just to get some feedback on you. From you on things that you would like to see in future webinars and materials. Again, the materials will be available as well as the recording. Next slide, please. Hello, I'm Sarah Pell. I am the director of MSERA at MEC, but I'm also the MCMC contact. So I'm very happy to say that with my new position as director of MSERA, I'm still able to do all the things I love related to our military initiatives. Next slide, please. A little bit about MEC. We are the Midwestern Higher Education Compact, and it was legislatively created and serves the Midwest census region, the 12 states that you see on the map. It's governed by 60 commissioners plus their alternates. We always want to make sure that we have enough people to bring to the table to help us move forward. We are one of the 4 regional higher ed compacts. So the other parts of the country have ones very specifically to their region as well. And MEC predominantly convenes higher education institutions, state agencies, federal agencies, and other non-for-profit organizations, really to bring them together and to share, promising practices, policies, and even legislation to really help the military connected students and their families succeed, meeting their educational goals. Next slide, please. If you're interested and looking at some of our prior 34 webinars, you can do so at that link. And if you really want to be kept up in the loop with all of the things that we have going on, such as the webinars, please sign up for our newsletter. Next slide, please. I'm very happy to introduce today's presenters. Will Hubbard is one of our regulars here with MEC in our military discussions, and we're very happy to have him back. He's the Vice President for Veterans and Military Policy at Veterans Education Success. And we also are joined by Barmak Nassirian, and Barmak is the Vice President for Higher Education Policy at Veterans Education Success. And another regular that we all know and love is Mr. Joshua Ryder. And Mr. Joshua is the Executive Director for the Center of Adult and Veteran Services at Kent State University in Ohio. So I'm glad we've got some regulars and a new face today. So Will, I'm going to turn it over to you and your team.
Great. Barmak, all you. Oh, you're on mute.
After 2 years of pandemic, you would think I know to unmute myself, but I'm a slow learner. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, MEC, for holding this webinar. We are pleased to join colleagues to give a high-level overview of a project that we launched. Let's go to the next slide and say a word or two about who Veterans Education Success is. What I generally emphasize to higher ed colleagues is what we're not. We are not another higher ed group. We are actually a veteran service organization focused squarely on promoting educational success for student veterans and military connected students. Most of our work tends to be focused on policy and advocacy on behalf of that population. And we've had a fairly, and I think Will get into this, but we've had a fairly successful track record of effective advocacy work, both at the regulatory and the legislative level. But to accomplish our mission, let's go to the next slide, Will. We do understand that working with folks on campuses who are our partners, officials like Joshua Ryder and all of you who are participating in this webinar, is critically important. We see a fair amount of just misunderstanding in terms of sometimes regulatory, sometimes administrative, sometimes legislative demands that are imposed on campus officials. Some of them make no sense at all to any of us. Some of them may make no sense at the campus level, but really do represent important requirements. What we want to do is eliminate unnecessary administrative inconveniences for officials, because those resources that go into compliance with nonsense would be so much better deployed in support of our student veterans. On the other hand, it is important to point out administrative inconvenience is not an excuse to avoid accountability, for example. So we want to work together with you, our colleagues and counterparts, to promote better outcomes for student veterans and military families. And this initiative of ours, which I'm going to defer to Joshua to discuss, is really the most concrete effort to date on our part to reach out and engage you so that we can learn from you, and at the same time, hopefully, provide you with some resources that may make it easier for you to do your jobs well. But before I hand it over to Joshua, why don't I ask Will to say a word or two about what we are doing so far on policy issues.
Thanks, Barmak. So I'm going to go through a couple of key policy moves that we've made over the last couple of years. And I provide that as context for this new resource that we're providing, because of a lot of what we've done in the past has relied heavily on the emphasis of partners like you all. And so I'm going to highlight a few of those wins that could not have been done without that kind of feedback. To kick off, we're looking at the 90-10 loophole. Many of you are familiar with this loophole. It's what we say has put a target on the backs of veterans and their families, specifically targeting their valuable GI Bill resources. And unfortunately, for years, veterans were subject to harassment from bad schools that simply just wanted those resources. And so fortunately, we're finally at the tail end of closing this loophole. Recently, we worked with over 30 groups in the military and veteran space to submit a letter to the U.S. Department of Education and the notice of proposed rulemaking. So it's basically the final step before the regulations are finalized and then promulgated. And so what this letter said was that we felt strongly that the regulations should reflect the true meaning and true spirit of what not only military and veterans organizations worked closely on, but also Capitol Hill in a bicameral and bipartisan manner. So once this loophole is finally closed as of next summer, we can all breathe a sigh of relief, move on to many other topics that we're also busy with. But again, this topic could not have been accomplished without the feedback from many of those working on campus and working directly with students. Next, we look at veteran readiness and employment. Some of you may recall that the VRE program went through a bit of a name change this past year. It used to be called VOC Rehab for short, but it's now Veteran Readiness and Employment. Still the same acronym, thank goodness. So don't stress it too much. But much more is required, and we recently submitted testimony to this on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, talking about major changes that need to happen. We feel like the program is generally successful, but needs a lot of improvements to take it to the next level. So we have that hyperlinked, and again, all these slides will be provided later, so feel free to take a look at that. Again, that's something that we heard very closely with our partners on campus, and so we take all that feedback and bring it together. But as we get into the Elevate Vets platform, you'll see that we're gonna streamline this process and make it much easier for you to tap in. With the final one, we're gonna look at the 85-15 rule. Many of you are probably perhaps too intimately familiar with this, and maybe not wanting to be so. But we heard a lot of feedback from our partners on campuses across America, and it really helped shape and refine this. So I'm going to look at a quick timeline here to give a sense of where things came from and where they went. So you can see that early on last year, well, mid-year really, the VA announced that they were going to make some significant changes to this, and it really put things into a tailspin. Our friends on Capitol Hill were felt very strongly that what VA was doing was not in line with what the congressional intent of this program was, which again is mainly meant to be a quality check or ensure that schools are not abusing the system and unfairly targeting certain populations. And so there was this reset that was announced A lot of language came out to try and clarify that reset. More clarifying language came out to clarify the clarifying language. It became a big mess, is the bottom line. And so finally, Congress stepped in and sought to clarify this themselves. And so that's what ultimately led to the legislation that we saw before us. This passed recently, but late in the year, the Congress finally passed it, then the president signed it. And so more recently, August 26th is when the president signed it to law. So that's now law of the land. Again, it could not have been done without the feedback that we received from our campus partners. And just looking ahead, what we're trying to do really is make sure that the floor is a bit higher than it is now. For example, there was the case of House of Prayer, which was a school that had sites in over 5 states in the United States that was raided by the FBI, and students largely categorized this school as a cult. And so that characterization obviously is alarming, and you wonder how GI Bill benefits, nearly $7 million of which were funding this school over those years. And so a lot of questions came out of that. I think we all recognize that good schools should be able to persist without major significant hurdles. But of course, there's still some schools that evade the true spirit of the law. And so we're working closely with Congress to maybe make sure that schools who are at the bottom are not taking advantage of those that we care about, which are students. And then finally, a look ahead as the big question becomes, if there is fraud, if a student is defrauded, what happens? Of course, America right now is talking quite a bit about canceling student loan debt, ITT Tech, Westwood, all these discussions are kind of melding together. But what's being lost in the discussion is the fact that if a student used their valuable hard-earned GI Bill benefits, there is no way for them to restore those benefits on the basis of fraud. So while one student in a classroom sitting next to another student, one being on Title IV funds and the other being on the GI Bill, of those 2 students, the one that cannot get made whole to some degree is the GI Bill student, the veteran. And so that's something we're working to change. And we're working closely with Congress to make that happen. So again, all of these initiatives wouldn't be possible without the feedback of our campus partners. And so we encourage you to engage if you have other topics or issues or ideas that you want to share or talk about or discuss. And it doesn't have to always be all policy. Then we're eager for that. So I'm going to now turn it over to Joshua to look at what this platform offers, some of the resources, and also ways to engage.
Thank you very much, Will. And also, thank you really to Barmak and Will and the rest of Veterans Education Success for the legislation and the legislative action that you take in advocacy. Because those are the folks like myself, that are administrators at universities or on the ground floor. We can't do that, right? Those are the pieces we can't do. So specifically, thank you for 8515 and for letting me know that there was a place called House of Prayer that was taking money off people. Both of those are giving me strength today. But all right, so let me go ahead and talk about Elevate Vets for you. And I'm gonna give you a little bit of my background as an administrator and why I find this tool to be so incredibly helpful. So this is, as it says, it's intended as this resource for professionals, and it's a fantastic resource. But so I began as a financial aid counselor, as a school certifying official, a VACO at the time. They've changed our names up a little bit, but it's the same stuff. And then as the tax got more complex and the post 9/11 GI Bill rolled out, I moved into the Center for Adult and Veteran Services. We formed that at Kent State, and I've worked through various administrative positions and leadership roles until I'm where I'm at now, which also works with our Division of Student Affairs here at Kent State in doing advocacy for other adult learner populations, parents, folks across our 8-campus system as well. So, but really when looking at, so I've sat in your chairs for many of you, if you're school certifying officials and those folks that are out there doing the day-to-day work, programming work, somebody who was a veterans club advisor at one point in time. And, so I've done all that student affairs work. And that dovetails into this really. So when we started having some of these conversations, really kind of about Elevate Vets and the content and the conversation that VES had created, and what that needs to look like, and is this great stuff? And as many times as administrators, we sit there and we don't know where to collect all of the information, right? You're getting VA training, you're getting SAA training, you are getting something from a VECO or WAVES or NAVPA, NASPA, ACPA, right? There's this alphabet soup of places that you can you can find all this different training, but it really isn't located necessarily all in one clearinghouse or all in one place. So that's really kind of the effort here, is to put this together and put all of these tools, resources, scholarly articles in one place, where as administrators, higher education professionals, we can go in and take a look at them. It also helps for professional development and training, right? We all have all those professional development hours we have to work in for the VA, like five hours of VA training every year to keep our school certifying official certification going, right? Absolutely. This has a lot of those type of resources, a lot of presentations from conferences. Does it substitute it? Absolutely not. But it is a way, though, that can help bolster your knowledge. So it does help provide professional development and training. If maybe you can't attend 4 conferences per year, I mean, who can, right? Like, who necessarily has the budget for that? Then we're going to bring a lot of those pieces here, right? The purpose of Elevate is to kind of take some of those pieces and have them there for us, right? Some of those trainings, etc. And it's like it says, there's so regulation, guidance, enforcement of policies. That's not my thing necessarily, unless it relates to school certifying official work and overseeing campus stuff. But talking about some of the work that is done nationally, right? Making sure it's all at our fingertips that we can look at. Because honestly, you can Google it, you can go out there and look around for it, but it's in a million different places. And these pieces, the resources that are available on the Elevate Vets site are going to be legitimate, right? I mean, these are going to be things that are real trainings, real resources. And then really there's 3 ways to engage with it. So there is the Elevate Vets page, right? We're going to get into that. I'm going to take us all through kind of like a little guided walkthrough of that so we can look at some of the resources together. There's the Elevate Vets network that works off a discourse platform. It's a place where there is ability to have post articles, comment on articles. You'd almost call it another type of knowledge repository for us to kind of add to and learn together, right? And build together and have working groups that come out of that. We'll get to that too. And then lastly, a listserv, brand new, hot off the presses. Well, this will be our main way that, that Elevate will communicate. Next slide, Will. This is our advisory board, this wonderful looking group of people here. These are folks from really kind of across higher ed, from small private to community colleges to 4-year publics, right? Big and small, urban and suburban, right? And even folks, working with Veterans Affairs for California State University system, for example, working with chancellors and things like that at that level. So this board is put together to act as an advisory board to VES in the areas of content, right? What content needs added? Is it good? In the areas of really kind of talking about what university administrators need in the forms of advocacy, what pieces that we need that are going to drive our work forward. And that's really kind of the whole purpose of the Elevate Vets, is to make the higher education professional that works with military connected students more informed about a number of different areas, which will thus make the lives of our military connected students that we all serve that much better, right? So that's the purpose, and that's what we do. I'm serving as chair for the Elevate Vets Advisory Board currently. And I'm very honored to be able to do that and work with this amazing group of professionals. Lots and lots and lots of years of experience on this. So we're very excited to be able to help out where we can. Next slide, please. This is our statement of purpose. Again, talk about content, right? Raising the floor, right? For us, for higher education administrators. Also really kind of talking about conversations about this lead, so what, why, right? Because it makes better lives for our military connected students, leads to higher retention and graduation rates. And I say military connected, not just veteran, because there's resources on here for, folks processing things and policy for dependents, et cetera, as well as service members also, right? Some of our tuition assistance type pieces we'll get to. Next slide. All right, so the time is upon us. Let me go ahead and do some screen sharing here with you. And as I always say, I am a Teams person, so Will, give me the thumbs up if I didn't just put my email up for everybody. All right, thank you very much. Good news, good first step. All right, so this is kind of, we've kind of talked about this. This is kind of the landing page. And it really kind of also talks to the generous support that helped create this from ECMC Foundation and the Joyce Foundation, right? That made a lot of this work possible for VES to be able to, create these kind of resources and allocate the kind of time towards this kind of generation of content. And so it's kind of organized around a couple different areas, 4 pillars you would call it: education, benefits processing, compliance, and services. And of course, a piece about the organization as well, a further piece about that organization. And this kind of gets into it. It's going to kind of roll through here, kind of those pieces, and then a way to contact. If you have feedback or questions, you can obviously reach out, and that'll somebody on that VES side would be able to answer your questions there as well. So we're just going to kind of go through and kind of walk through it a little bit. I'm not going to read everything. I'm not going to click every link, but I want to. We don't have that kind of time, but I can really kind of take you through and show you kind of how it works, right? So in the area of education benefits, this is going to be great so that the target here, let's say you are a new certifying official, or you are a new school official working with military connected students and their benefits, or maybe you're even a bit more seasoned, right? There's going to be resources here, but it will also, this is going to be very helpful if you are a new professional then. Within that first year, right? There's going to be some things in here they're going to talk about post 9/11, GI Bill benefits. So if you're a military connected student, you could also get a lot out of this as well. If you want to learn how your benefits really work, if you really want to get that deep into it. But yeah, you can absolutely find out some pieces of information here. But this is very good for when you talk about any of these different types of benefits, right? We talked about VR&E example. This is what, this is VR&E. And then there's some information. We talk about tungsten on here. We talk about general info, some FAQs, and then just kind of an overview, a VA overview of what Chapter 31 VR&E is, right? And these are all going to link you out to other areas or potentially to PDFs or other material, right? Slide decks, etc., from different conferences. We talk about if you're a school certifying official, and you talk about, you're talking about getting your students all set up for benefits, helpful checklists, one from Kent State University. That's me. And then there's University of Tampa in Central Florida. Again, these are people that aren't selected at random. They're folks that are really doing great work and really helping to guide the work forward. So we're looking at best practice. So again, if you have we can get to how we can, you can contribute to the conversation about best practice, but you can look at different checklists, for example, it'll kind of guide you out. And then you're here and you can talk about scanning through and looking at these different checklists that you might need to certify your students, right? And all the way from residency, yellow ribbon, all of these different things, how to start a student org, right? We understand like there's these pieces of if you're a student, you want to start an org, or hey, guess what? You have veterans now, right? You're an administrator and one of your hats is veterans and they want an organization. This is a way to do that. This is going to take you through how to get some of that process rolling for you. Then a little bit more of maybe our day-to-day work, the school certifying officials work, benefits processing. If you're new, school handbooks, beginner boot camps, right? This kind of has a little bit of verbiage at the top of it about what it all is, what the entire page means. Helping military connected students use VA education benefits they've earned can be complex. Boy, there's an understatement, huh? So it is. So then we can kind of work you through some of these things, talking about new information. VA wants an enrollment manager. We've just updated this with some new enrollment manager training, and we're going to have some more pieces as they kind of continue to move us forward to the 2023 launch for that. Tuition assistance, specifically Army Ignited. Boy, that was fun, huh? So you've heard me talk about that a little bit, maybe if you've listened to these before. But we've kind of go in here and we have some things on TA Simplified, right? Some of this stuff is going to be dated very soon, and we're going to get ready to pull it back out and put new things in here because it's going to AI portal, and we're going to have those new instructions that they're going to, as they transition into an off-the-shelf package to kind of make that a lot more smooth, as that has Army Ignited 1.0 is going away and 2.0 is upon us, right? And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. And then we have a piece on best practices in VA certification. Let's say you're a school certifying official and you're just, right, you're just starting, or maybe you've had a bad compliance visit, or maybe it's one of your hats and you have 20, and you need to have some best practices here. Yep, we have some conference presentations, but we have this PDF that was created as a best practice list of things in which, as a school certifying official, administrator, whatever your role may be, or the folks under you's role might be, right? If this falls under your purview, but you don't do it on a day-to-day basis, your folks could benefit from looking at this and being able to make their lives easier, which is only, again, going to make your students' lives easier. And it's going to stop them from melting your email and voicemail from having some payment issues, right? Training and professional development, that's a big piece of what we talked about. NAVPA, NASPA, these national opportunities that come up, annual school certifying official training, all of this amazing information is on here. Very easy to navigate. You can obviously use the top tabs. You can use the side tabs. This is more of the, this is compliance. This is going to be more of the Barmak and Will world here, but I'll attempt to, kind of muddle my way through this. Talking about the legislation, we keep this really up to date. So Isaacson, Rowe, Colmery, 8 keys, principles, COVID-19 protection bills, which are about to leave. And we're about to have some new verbiage in there, really kind of around some of the 8515 pieces are going to be dropped in there, and all that's going to be added in the extremely near future. And talking about compliance, school certificate, VA compliance surveys, right? How do you get through those? How does your school get through it? Even if you're not the school certifying official, and if it lives under you, you have to know how to be able to get through this and how to be ready. Take you through all 3 different areas. These 4 areas, organizing, planning, connecting. What does it look like on game day? And then all the way through, like, how to do successful surveys. And a very good, seems slightly dated, but is still fantastic guidance from an SAA 2018 workshop on how to really put this together. And again, 8515 and 35% is going to be changing. There's actually some training next week on that, so that they're going to be doing some additional training, and we'll have that posted up and ready. And then general resources on policy that's informed by VES. And then, of course, this right down here at the bottom is how you would join the discourse, how you can hop into that, you visit the community, take a look at it. And get to that in a second. Looks like I'm still doing okay on time. And then services. So it talks about working with military connected students goes beyond the role of the school certifying official. Maybe as you're listening to this conference, you're like, I'm not a school certifying official. I don't do policy. I don't care about anything you've said so far, but I work in student activities, or I work with the population, right? I don't process, but we work in the counseling area. We work in academic advising. This is going to have some great, everything from pre-admission advising programs like Warrior Scholar, VES, obviously information service to school. We talk about employment. More and more folks want to, state legislatures, federal legislatures want to know what institutions of higher education are doing with these military connected student bucks that they're sending out. Billions and billions and billions of dollars, right? That they've sent out since 2009. What are the employment outcomes, right? What are the graduation rates and outcomes? So they're asking more of those. Got some suggestions and tips here from the great folks at Syracuse, their veteran career services, on delivering some of these career-based programs, some video resources, and scholarly resources as well. A bevy of scholarly resources that have been added in there. There are articles on the topic, everything from the work of Dr. David Bakke, all the way down to some of those works that are George Koo, right? When you're talking about, higher education, administration, philosophy, that's the free square in the center of the bingo game right there. That's the beginning and the foundation of the philosophy. So we want to also make sure that the work is steeped in these scholarly resources and philosophy. And then impact, right? High impact practices. That's another kind of a higher ed buzzword, but it's very important. Talking about how to build those high impact practices on your campus to engage the veteran and the military connected student. Because if they're engaged and they feel like they belong and they matter, data shows that they stay, right? They retain, they persist, and they graduate, right? And that's the point. That's the whole and entire point of it, right? That is the only point. So these are kind of additional resources. And as we get additional things built up through through the board and other folks informing us. Of course, those will be kind of added on here. And the About Us tab just kind of takes you through, again, a little piece about the organization and some of the great funders and how to contact. And then, of course, I will just stop there because I have a little bit more to cover. But so that's kind of it in a nutshell. And then we'll kind of get back to, I think we might have a little bit more in the slide deck there to kind of work through. But this is again, I can't say enough about the resource. I mean, if again, from the beginning level all the way up to the mid-professional, up to the kind of the more advanced career professional, there's resources there for you. So the Elevated Vets Network is this online community. That was kind of at the bottom, how to join that. It's a discourse community that is really kind of has great articles and places you can share. It's like it says, news updates, a way to kind of put those best practices out there and start conversations with colleagues and have really kind of those instructive and informative conversations. We're in the process of working as a board on creating these work groups, one on public policy, one on a self-audit process for school certifying officials, and one around veteran graduation rate comparisons, which we're going to be getting out there very soon, where we want to talk about very deeply in the conversation of our graduating our veterans and how they're ranked and how institutions are performing in those areas. Yep, thank you, Mary, for that link in the chat. That's really kind of how you can hop onto the discourse and kind of take a peek around over there, add it in some of the great material that's there as well. Next slide, Will. All right, as promised, also our new listserv. So this is going to be how it's a private listserv for administrators, school officials that are interested in advancing these opportunities that we've talked about, right? You use this link to subscribe to it. And then there's I think Barmak is the gatekeeper. No, I'm not sure. And then you will, and then that's kind of how we are going to begin to communicate with you, right? Hey, when it comes time for a call for working groups, you'll get an email maybe from myself, right? For example, and says, hey, if you're interested in one of these three areas, let us know, right? You're interested in policy, you're interested in self-audit, right? Preparation. You are interested in this piece around graduation rates, let us know. And then we can go ahead and really kind of get you involved in that conversation. And it's a little bit more direct. It's going to go right to your email can communicate back, because the discourse is fantastic, but there can be a bit of delay, kind of in going back in and out of the site and communicating. This is direct. You'll be able to respond directly back to one of us, and then we can work with you on getting you assigned into the right area and making sure you get involved and continue to grow professionally and advance professionally, which is, again, going to help our military connected students out. And then there's all of us down there if you have any questions. So questions and feedback.
Yes, please make sure that you put any question that you have in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen.
While folks are thinking about their questions, let me answer a question that has been asked of us before and respond to it, lest it be percolating in the back of anyone's mind. We do not intend this thing to be analogous to a professional membership organization. We have no desire to charge membership fees. We will have no awards. There will be none of the very appropriate things that are quite right in the setting of a professional association. This is really an attempt at creating a community. And for a community to become active and to be sufficiently engaged and pluralistic, you can't let people's budget be the reason they join or don't join. So we do not charge any fees for involvement. And the hope is that both sides, the campus colleagues who step forward to engage us, as well as we on our side, end up learning from each other and helping each other be better. That's the idea. It's a very sort of peer-to-peer idea. There is no structural hierarchy here. Nobody's ordering anybody to do anything. It's entirely voluntary and free and is intended to remain that way. I just wanted
Thank
to
you,
point that
Barmak.
out because sometimes people kind of hesitate to think of what is this thing? What am I signing up for? You're not signing up for anything. You're
Exactly.
signing up for a conversation.
And speaking of signing up, if you want to receive the emails or be on the listserv from VES, Barmak, how did they do that again?
Well, there are multiple venues. Probably the easiest way of beginning that engagement would be through the listserv. People tend to find that, that's so amazing to me because email is a couple of decades old by now, 3 decades old by now, but it is still the more convenient way for most people. So if you'd like to receive communications via email, that's the way to go. If you want to be a little more engaged with us, particularly as work groups begin to seriously deliberate on particular topics, you probably do want to set up a little account for yourself on our discourse site. Again, account scares people. It doesn't have any monetary value. We don't collect any information about you. We're not going to sell your name. We're not going to rent your name. We're not here to do any of those things. But you can set up an account for yourself on the discourse site, which is the community platform. We intend to use that discourse site mostly for work group activity. And I've had the privilege of sitting on a couple of the advisory group discussions that Joshua let me sit in on. And the conversation was really spectacular. I mean, there is a lot of stuff to be done. And one of the points I always make to people, the mark of a profession is the ability to self-regulate, to set standards, to set expectations. So we want to engage people through the discourse site where they have the time and the inclination to do a little more. But if you just want to keep in touch, the listserv is the easier way to go.
Thank you. And Mary was kind enough to put that link in the chat. Josh, this one is for you. For new SCOs, is there more hands-on training when it comes to certifying students rather than the training by PowerPoint or the simple SCO handbook, which can be, quite dry?
Yeah, it can. And so nothing specifically other than some of like the best practice worksheets on, which the very detailed best practice worksheet goes through some of the school certifying official piece, but the hands-on piece, that is going to be something that is really typically provided by the SAA. They can provide a little bit of that on campus. And then they do that if you're able to attend like a professional development opportunity, whether it's an SAA, like one-day in-state conference. They do some VA1 walkthroughs that are very kind of right from the top, or enrollment manager very soon. And anything like, so a VICO, if you're in kind of this side of the Mississippi, on the east here, or waves out towards the west, right? Those have a lot of like school certifying official beginner boot camps, and they are going to walk you through from the time that you adopt a student in VA1 all the way through adjustments, adds, drops. So those would be my recommendations right away.
Great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And Will, I'm going to turn this one over to you. For the employment side of the house, have you engaged with the JVSG grant recipients or the Department of Labor?
Yeah, so we're in conversation with DOL pretty regularly, specifically their vets team, really all levels of it, the employment side, the credentialing side, the counseling side. And so we're talking to their whole team quite a bit. In terms of what the grant recipients and how those come into play, that's not something we've talked about yet, but I'd love for you to follow up with us so we can have further conversation about what you might be thinking about that. I think it's a great point, and we'd love to talk more. Great.
And Will, I'm also going to throw this one out to you, just because of your years of experience and your connections. Can Elevate Vets work with the VA GI Bill comparison tool to actually get it updated and accurate? A lot of the information about those institutions is incorrect. and there is not a reliable way to request the information to be updated. I myself had tried to get in there and it just keeps sending me in circles. So yes, is there a way to do that? For example, it says Ohio has legislation requiring priority registration since 2014, but a lot of schools are listed as not having it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would strongly recommend you reach out to us, so we can flag it through our own channels. I think part of the value of the Elevate Vets platform is the fact that you can interact with us directly and take advantage of the fact that we're also talking to a lot of people that maybe you don't have access to on a regular basis, but through the nature of the work that we're doing, we do have some of that access and we're happy to share it. We are not a stingy organization that's unwilling to provide connections or access. That's really why we exist. So in those cases, I would say, follow up with us directly, flag for us some of the concerns that you have. I can tell you that we also have pretty significant concerns when it comes to the GI Bill comparison tool. Notably, the fact that the VA facility codes and OPEIDs are not being mapped as they used to be, among quite a few other topics. So please provide that feedback. It's all very helpful. And then we're able to actually advocate on your behalf for those reasons.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, no worries. And hey, Jared, good to see you on here from the great state of Ohio. So also in regards to the Elevate Vets Advisory Board, we've had a lot of conversations regarding these really kind of the tool, the GI Bill comparison tool, and the veteran graduation rates piece, right? That's kind of where some of that working group conversation comes from, is the fact that those aren't really reflective necessarily of accuracy, right? They don't necessarily compare institution types. They don't compare veterans to veterans. They compare sometimes veterans to other folks, right, that are traditional age students. And that's not necessarily, those kind of comparisons aren't really accurate, and the numbers are often not even remotely close, right? So those are conversations we've had, and we're looking, when we launch kind of one of those working groups, it's going to work very heavily in that area. So when that listserv comes out that asks you to, what you want to be a part of, that's definitely a way to join the conversation. And as Will said, you can just, this is the beauty of this, is you can just reach out and talk to an organization that has direct ties towards, towards lobbying for legislation, right? And advocating, right? So that's unique on this page as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I will also just flag that, and I've already made the point, but if other questions come up or you want to have a conversation about something moving forward, we're always open to that. So don't hesitate to reach out. I pretty regularly talk to folks on campuses across the country that somehow got our email and reached out and wanted to talk about something or saw us testify and had a comment. We're very accessible, and please take advantage of that.
Any
No, I
parting
want to echo
thoughts?
that. And I also want to say, especially when you run into compliance difficulties, when you see dysfunctions that strike you as in need of correction, we are constantly working on moving legislation, on regulatory changes, on enforcement changes, and hearing from you as to what works and what doesn't, and why, and perhaps how to fix it. Would actually help improve the system for everybody. So particularly when you run into roadblocks, let us know, because we may be able to help.
Thank you. Will, Josh, any parting words of wisdom?
I would share a pun, but I think Barmak's head would explode. So I'll just I'll refrain. But thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure. We really appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. We're looking forward to continuing this conversation with you in moving forward.
Wonderful.
And I want to thank you, Sarah, and Meg, for facilitating this. I want to thank Joshua for stepping up and assuming this additional responsibility on top of his day job, which I'm sure keeps him busier than he needs to be. And I want to thank Will on behalf of all the attendees for not sharing that dad joke.
No problem.
All right, as a reminder, the recording and the relative slides will be up on the MEC website. And I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot more from MEC and Elevate Vets in the future. So thank you all so much for attending, and we will be in touch. Have a good day, everyone.